Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Happy Monday. It's a marvelous Monday. It's a manic Monday. It has been a very busy Monday. I should call it Missouri Monday. Today is the launch of pre-launch. If you're in Missouri, you can go find all kinds of things about legal online sports betting being available in your state. So that means the work is very crazy, very hectic. Many people looking to yours truly for answers. And then there are all of you who are looking to yours truly for some answers about what in the world is happening in Philadelphia sports. Because on one hand, we can look at this thing very objectively and say, Eagles pick up a huge win against the Lions and what could ultimately be the game that decides home field advantage in the entire NFC playoffs, which is really important. You could take a look at what the Flyers were able to do over the weekend. You could take a look at the fact that the Sixers are slated to get back a guy that, he may or may not remember is actually a member of this team. That guy's name is Paul George, and it sounds like he's actually going to make his season debut tonight against his former team, the Los Angeles Clippers. We have all that stuff to get to. But the show is different right now than it was going to be if I had done the show about 2 hours ago, because, of course, we've been waiting for the other shoe to fall. There have been some injuries that have come out since yesterday's game. And most notably, there is a new line of thinking, a new narrative that is sweeping the nation. And I guess is going to now lead to the potential demise of your team, your town, your Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to get to all of that. But before we do, we're going to bring in a guy who knows a thing or two about bringing things to an untimely demise. Video guy Amadeo, how are you today?
Doing good. Yesterday was completely insane with my father's car getting stolen, finding that out in the afternoon, and then the Eagles not making life any less stressful. So, yeah, yesterday was definitely crazy.
Let's put up a poll. I'm actually going to put up a poll right now. What is more stressful, having your car stolen or watching the Eagles take on the Lions? I'll drop that over in the comments and people can battle it out. Well, the car getting stolen is unfortunate. Any leads to this point?
No, we have all the videos. Like, we have perfect video of the car pulling up. It's funny too because someone else that was down here, the when you go down to the South Philly Chickies and Peaches, see Pastificio right next door.
Sure.
So the owner of that place, his son, also had his car stolen in the morning, and his car
was it the same kind of car?
Same exact model as my dad's Acura TLX. It was a white car, and then in the video you see a white car pull up to our car. So we're assuming that was the stolen other car pulling up to our car to get stolen as well. So both cars got stolen, and it took them like 20-40 minutes to get into the car in general, and we don't even know where the car is, so no idea. So,
well, I can tell you now that the poll is currently live over on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel. What is more stressful, having your car stolen or watching the Eagles? You can weigh in there. Now, thankfully, I think many of us have never been through having a car stolen. However, I will tell you that watching the Eagles hasn't exactly been rainbows and smiles the last few weeks, unless you're a big fan of defense. And I love me some defense. But it has not been what I think we all expected this season to be. And, I said last week, the Eagles certainly have to be a team that's better than scoring 10 points against the Packers. And I guess the Eagles took that a little bit too literally. And they said, all right, well, fine. 10 isn't enough. How about 16? How about we do 16? Does 16 sound good? No, 16 doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound good at all. So I want to get to what actually happened in the game, but I think it's important to probably set the stage here with some of the stuff that has come out since the game. Because again, typically the day after games, I'm not here doing the X's and O breakdowns. You guys have other places that you go for that. If I ever feel so moved by the spirit to bring somebody on here with film and the X's and O's, we'll get there, but I don't ever see that happening. But who knows? Like, weirder things have happened in this world. I want to get to the thing that seems to have taken over Eagles Twitter, and the thing that, like, largely I find very worrisome, and I would typically kind of just throw it out and kind of poo-poo the whole thing. However, it's the source of the information that gives me pause. It's the source of the information that makes me think there might actually be something a little bit amiss. And if this is true, and what I'm about to play for you and who it came from, if it is true, then it's really, really deeply concerning because it comes from none other than Derek Gunn. And I think that we can all pretty much acknowledge together that Derek Gunn has largely and for a very long time been one of the most plugged in people around the Eagles, reporting on the Eagles, talking about the Eagles. He's not a hot take artist. He's not somebody who just throws shit against the wall and hopes that it sticks. he has been kind of at the forefront of a lot of things breaking. And so when Derek Gunn goes on to his post-game show with Seth Joyner and Mark Frazetta and says what we're about to play for you, it does for once actually make me go, not ideal. But I want everybody to hear it first, and then they can let me know. You can let me know in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, and X. If you agree or disagree, don't forget, if you're on X, you have to click the video first, go into old Periscope mode, and if you comment from there, we can bring it up on the screen, which also reminds me, comments are now on the screen. There have been comments going for quite a while now. You'll see them flowing through right there by Amadeo as the show goes on. But I want to get to this because this is maybe the first time that I've heard something about Jalen Hurts, and I've gone, I don't like that. Let's go out to Derek Gunn. This again is post-game yesterday.
I've been telling you, there's a lot of people in that organization that are frustrated with the quarterback situation right now, but the quarterback understands he has them over a barrel. This is almost...
All right, so I'm going to re-rack that. First 10 seconds, I think, are almost as important as anything else we're going to get to. There's frustration in the building. And listen to the second part of what he says.
I've been telling you, there's a lot of people in that organization that are frustrated with the quarterback situation right now, but the quarterback understands he has them over a barrel.
So that is the part that's actually scary. And we'll come back to this in a second, but that's the part that's a little bit scary. So there are people in the organization that are frustrated with the quarterback. Whatever, I don't care, right? For the most part, I wouldn't care. Do you want to say like, oh, the wideouts are frustrated, A.J. Brown is frustrated, Devontae Smith is frustrated, is Dallas Goedert frustrated, is Saquon Barkley frustrated with how the season's gone? I don't know. The part that worries me is that second part. The quarterback knows he has them over a barrel. Knows that he has them over the barrel. How? Well, we're going to continue with D-Gun, and we're gonna bring it back to him because it keeps going, and I'm not sure that it's going to get any better here over the next 20 or so seconds.
This is almost Carson Wentz part 2. They're not going to...
I'm sorry, what? Hold on, let's
part 2. They're not going to... This is almost Carson Wentz part 2. This is almost Carson Wentz part 2. This is almost Carson Wentz part 2.
Yikes.
I'm don't liking that.
Yikes.
I'm not liking that. All right, let's let D-Gun finish.
They're not going to eat this kind of money yet. There's no way they're going to eat this kind of money. Look at the cap hit they took when they got rid of Carson. And look, it took them a couple of years to get back on solid ground again, footing, because they were handcuffed financially because of what they owed in the cap hit they took with Carson Wentz. You got the same scenario here with a bigger volume of money involved here. I've been telling you this.
Okay, so where do we go from here? There are a couple of things that are deeply, deeply concerning. Let's start with the first part. People are frustrated in the organization. That doesn't matter. I don't actually care that much about that part. He knows he has them over a barrel. I want to get back to that in a second because Seth Joyner went on WIP today and I think kind of alluded to some of what Derek Gunn's talking about. And there's this idea out there that this could be Carson Wentz 2.0. Now, is this Carson Wentz part 2 in that Jalen Hurts is a malcontent? No, I don't think that that's the case. Is it a Carson Wentz part 2 in that, like, there's this really huge contract and it's going to be almost impossible to move and there's going to be a lot of dead money if you do? I guess in theory. Here's the thing, though. Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts are entirely different players. I mean, so, like, on the field at least, and at least how it's been described so far in his career, Jalen Hurts has been described as a true leader. Carson Wentz was viewed as the guy who was kind of pouting in the Super Bowl after winning it because he wasn't the one to lead the team to the Super Bowl victory. That's a pretty stark contrast. The Eagles are also winning. They're winning a lot. They're the top team in the NFC. They're coming off a Super Bowl win. They've had 2 Super Bowl appearances in 3 years. He's been the best player on the field in both of those Super Bowls. So, like, Amadeo, I hear this, and the only reason I'm giving it any kind of credence is because it's Derek Gunn reporting it, but is this concerning?
Yes. And I do go on the fact that I think this was, what was it, after the 2023 season, after that entire collapse where we got that long article and all that long report about, like, all the stuff that was going on in the Eagles locker room.
The Santa Liquido one.
Yeah, the Santa Liquido article talking about Jalen Hurts and how he more keeps to himself and how he really hasn't moved up as a leader and all that stuff. Now, granted, we
Yeah.
didn't hear a lot of that stuff as last season went along because of how successful they got and obviously winning a Super Bowl. But if it's coming from also somebody like a Derek Gunn and this is happening again, and there's something that's going on in the locker room that's revolving around maybe the leadership style of a Jalen Hurts, that definitely is something that you just have to monitor and just wait and see how this goes. So I don't know how this is going to end. They do keep winning in spite of all this. So right now, it doesn't look like winning is shielding all of this because it's coming out to the blue. But I guess this is just something you monitor until something just another ball drops. I think that's just what you got to take with right now.
I guess that's the tricky thing too, is like I like to try to be fair and like listen, I'm a big fan of like what Hertz brings to the table. And I do think that like leadership's a thing you can't really teach. You either have it or you don't. There were some things coming out going into the weekend from Diana Rossini about how the I guess the thought in the building is that Hertz is unwilling to take shots down the field, that he's looking more for checkdowns and sure things. And here's the problem. If you're a skill position player, that is going to bother you because you want to be given the opportunity to make a play. Go back to Devontae Smith. I think it was last week, right, when he had the touchdown against the Packers. He said in the locker room post game, it feels great to have a quarterback who like puts you in position to make that kind of play. Like you feel great about having the opportunity to make that kind of play. If you're a guy who is as skilled as a Devontae Smith or an AJ Brown or a Dallas Goedert, and you're not given the opportunity to make that play because the quarterback kind of does the cost analysis, I guess we'll call it, right? Or the risk assessment at any given snap, any given throw, and decides that rather than run the risk of a turnover, he's just going to check down. You're going to be frustrated. You're out there running, right? Like running routes is still running routes. You're still out there running. There's still physicality. You're still engaged with the defensive back or whoever you're lined up against. So it's not like you just get to take plays off. You can't do that. If you do, you're coming out of the game. I know that people like to go to the AJ Brown go route yesterday, and they're like, well, it looks like he stopped running. And it does look like he stopped running on the one deep ball down the left sideline. I understand why you'd be frustrated. At the same time, I go, all right, if Jalen Hurts were less risk averse and Jalen Hurts were turning the ball over at a higher rate while also trying to take those shots, and the Eagles weren't winning games, well, then he would be damned that way. He's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. If he tries to complete balls into triple coverage like Carson Wentz used to, you're going to question his decision-making, right? No one is effectively questioning his decision-making right now. They might be questioning whether or not he's got the chutzpah to go deep or to throw a ball into a tight window, but we've seen him do that in 2 Super Bowls. So like when all the chips are down, the guy has shown you that he can deliver and he can take over a game. But on a cold, very windy night at Lincoln Financial Field, when the ultimate goal isn't to win by the most points possible, it's just to win the game, are we really that upset that the Eagles pull off a win? And it's, a relatively narrow one. And yeah, it's only 1 touchdown on the board, but like, isn't the point to win the games? Right? Like, isn't that it?
Yeah, I think where most of the frustration comes from, and I think the frustration is warranted to an extent, it's just that the offense is just such a slug every single week. And I think majority of the frustration goes into the wrong territories because obviously AJ Brown has been a major distraction to all the frustration each and every week because of all the drama that he does spute on social media. And then when he has to talk to the media and all that stuff, explaining why he does what he does and why he's frustrated with the way the offense is, I really think we ignore the major fact is that play calling is the biggest weakness of this team from an offensive standpoint. And you have an offensive coordinator that has no experience in this position given that job. And it does not look like he just finds ways to improve. He does not look like he's improving after every week. People tried to give him that grace after the 2-week span against the Vikings and the Giants. But then when you go into games against better competition with Green Bay and Detroit, the offense just looks completely trash. And I think when you go to last year, when you had an experienced play caller with Kellen Moore, you got away with a lot of the worries with the pass game because the offensive line was playing to an historic rate. You had Saquon Barkley rushing to an historic rate. This year, the offensive line is a complete shell of itself. Lane Johnson's constantly in and out. Cam Jurgensen's constantly in and out. Jordan Mailata isn't the same player, and Landon Dickerson is still very much banged up probably from the beginning of the season. So the offensive line play isn't the same, which means also affects Saquon Barkley's game. And now that magnetizes how bad the passing game is. And I think a lot of that has to be reflected on Kevin Patullo because he doesn't do a good enough job to get this passing game working.
The line is a legitimate concern. And it's been a concern since early in the season. I think even going into the year, I said, like, as long as the offensive line can stay healthy, this team could go back to a Super Bowl. I also noted that last year they were very, very lucky from a health standpoint. The offensive line was largely healthy for most of the season last year. They didn't and the thing that I think I was the most upset about of all the guys that moved on from this team, Mekhi Becton to me was the one that I just hated to lose. Because to me, it's like you just put together a season where you had a guy with a legitimate opportunity to break the all-time rushing record in a regular season. It looked like that line was just so perfectly gelled together. You're still running that cheat code of a play the tush push. Mekhi Becton didn't get a ton of money out of the Chargers. He didn't get an amount of money that I think the Eagles couldn't have matched. Now, there was that thing like a few weeks into the season where there was that lady on Instagram who was accusing him of being her baby daddy and abandoning and pooping his pants and doing crack or something. Like there was a lot. There was if you missed it, those accusations were out there somewhere. And we certainly hope Mekhi Becton's not that kind of guy. But I will say that they very clearly seem to miss him in the running game. I don't think there's any question about that. And the really crappy thing here is that, today we found out that Lane Johnson's hurt. And we all know this. If you followed the Eagles for years, you know that when Lane Johnson is out, the likelihood of this team winning games goes down exponentially. I've seen some people that have kind of thrown out the idea that Jordan Mailata's had a regression season or a plateau season. He doesn't look quite like the same guy. But this is the one that really hurts. Lane Johnson going out with a Liz Frank injury is a legitimate problem. Schefter reported this morning it's not expected to be season ending, but he could be headed to injured reserve. I think that they have the chance of kind of overcoming it, but the problem is that they just don't have much depth on the line at all. And it feels like we've heard the name Fred Johnson a bunch in recent weeks, and he's been a good player who's filled in admirably at times, but he's not Lane Johnson. Yeah, Johnson's on the back of the jersey, but they're not the same player. That to me is the biggest concern, right? Your right tackle, who's been one of the best tackles in football for over a decade, to lose that guy doesn't help. Now, if we look at it and we say, all right, look at the next few teams that they play against and kind of play this one out. They're in Dallas this Sunday. They could probably overcome. Now, Dallas's defense has gotten a bit better, especially with trades. I think the Cowboys are going to be a pretty tough opponent, especially on the road. You're home against the Bears team. I don't know if you've seen the whole thing about the Bears and Eagles alliance to this point. It's pretty funny.
That's been funny, yeah.
The Bears have put together a good season. You're at home. I'd like to think that they'll be okay there. At the Chargers, I think you could probably win that game. Home against the Raiders, I'd say is very likely in play. Then you're at the Commanders. At the Bills is your toughest game probably right before the calendar flips. In the last game of the year, you're home against the Commanders. So 2 of your last 3 against the Commanders. You don't really worry. Now, in an ideal situation, you probably come out of this stretch, obviously above 500. The Bears game is one that could ultimately be one of those potential home field tiebreaker kind of games. So you really need that one. But the rest of the games, you're talking about some out of conference games. I think that the loss of Lane Johnson hurts, but it doesn't kill your season. I guess the downside here is that of all the people to lose on that line, a line that's already been struggling, he's probably the one that hurts the most to lose.
And I think it also doesn't help from the fact that you have Tyler Steen, who this is really his first full season as being a starter on that offensive line playing next to Lane Johnson, to where if you lose to Lane Johnson last year, it was Mekhi Becton in that spot with Fred Johnson coming in. Now it's Fred Johnson coming in with a rookie, and that's going to put a lot more pressure on both of those guys to try to replace that instead of just okay, you got a responsible guy here in Becton, and we don't have to worry totally about the loss. But now you really have to worry about the loss.
And here's the thing, too, is so he's your right tackle, your blindside guy, and Mailata's still there. You typically know that if Mailata were to go out, you could very easily plug and play Lane Johnson to the other side. there's no reason for you to do that with Mailata. Hopefully Fred Johnson's able to kind of stem the tide. The big thing is that they have got to get the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands faster. And that's the thing that, like, my big takeaway from Sunday's game is, despite the fact that this line has had some struggles, despite the fact that this running game just has not been as efficient as you would want it to be, and as explosive as you want it to be, which, again, I think a lot of that is Becton, they're still giving Jalen Hurts plenty of time to make quick reads, and he's not getting the ball out of his hands. Now, again, is that because he's so risk averse? Is that because he doesn't want to throw into traffic and into tight windows? Maybe. But at some point, you have to speed up that decision-making process and either get rid of the ball or get out there and use your legs. And like, they were talking about this a lot on Sunday night. Chris Collinsworth, I feel like, talked about this, I don't know, 8 or 9 times. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it felt like it was nonstop. Talking about how Jalen Hurts in the past has had more designed runs called for him week in and week out. And you're not seeing a lot of that. When he runs, it's because he's out of options and he's scrambling, and he's not picking up, big 30, 40-yard chunks. You're getting like 7 yards. And there was the play that he was, I think, really lucky to have not blown out his knee, where he's heading out of bounds. Defender goes, kind of dives at him, and it was weird, like kind of pushed at the back of his knee, which I don't know what that was. And I don't want to say it was like the dirtiest thing ever, but like, as you're taking a step, somebody pushing on the back of your knee like that, I mean, there's a potential that like your other leg kind of buckles, like all of the weight shifts to the other, and your leg buckles and you blow out your ACL or something. So like, it wasn't ideal. I put up a poll though about Jalen, and the poll was, could you live with losses if Jalen Hurts took more risks? The 2 options were yes or no, I like winning. And yes has 33% of the vote, and no, I like winning has 67% of the vote. And to catch people up on the other one that we had today about the car, what's more stressful, having your car stolen or watching the Eagles? Having your car stolen, 79%, watching the Eagles, only 21%. So make of that what you will.
I mean, that's probably rightfully so. The Eagles more was just a joke about adding the stress to it.
Yeah. One of the guys, if we flip from the offense to the defense, one of the guys who really stood out last night, and you love to see this guy stand out, was Nakobe Dean. And I almost did one of the phrases that I hate. Here's a guy. Reminds me of like John Gruden. I don't hate John Gruden, but like, here's a guy who 6'5", went to Valley Forge Christian School. He's a great guy, man. 4'140. Now, Nakobe Dean is a dude that when he came into the league, there were questions about whether or not he was undersized. Was he going to succeed at this level? Yes, he was like critical on his defense in college, but could he stay healthy? The answer to that has kind of been no, consistently. But can Nakobe Dean be an impact player? He was fantastic on Sunday night, blowing up plays. Brian Baldinger, I would encourage people to like go check out one of his breakdowns over on Twitter that he put out this morning. But like, just him blowing up running backs that have the audacity to try to block him. I mean, he did that. He absolutely blew a dude up against Green Bay. He leveled a guy last night. Nakobe Dean is just a bona fide stud and the kind of game breaker you need at that position. But Nakobe Dean had, I think, maybe one of the most interesting quotes after the game. I want to get your reaction to it. So Nakobe Dean was asked about the amount of times that the Lions went for it on 4th down. Now, we know that Dan Campbell is a very aggressive coach. Nick Sirianni's an aggressive coach. They don't, I don't know if it's really the analytics. I think they honestly go with their gut, and you just kind of do the math of like, on a cold, windy night in Philadelphia, are you really going to try to punt? Is it really that advantageous? I'm going to go out to Nakobe Dean because I thought his comment was pretty damn telling. This is Nakobe Dean talking about the Lions' decision to go for it on 4th down as many times as they did on Sunday night.
For sure. Almost disrespectful. Almost disrespectful. Even if it's not disrespectful for the us, I feel like it's disrespectful to our offense. Because like, they gonna get okay field position, but that's just my defensive mindedness, though. I don't really take it, no offense to it. I know what type of people they are, or I know what type of team they are over there, and we expected it to be a game like this, so we just had to let up.
So he does kind of like hedge it a little bit, right? And doesn't want it to be incendiary. Doesn't want to become like bulletin board material after the fact, because they might meet in the playoffs. But this idea that it's like, on one hand, it's like disrespectful to the defense because it's like, oh, we think we can pick this up against you, even though like the Eagles very clearly in back-to-back weeks have shown like, thou shalt not succeed on fourth down. But then also kind of flips it and says it's also kind of disrespectful to our offense because that means that they don't give a shit. If they don't get that fourth down conversion, they don't really care because they're not afraid of our offense going the other way with short fields. And to be fair,
Fairness.
the Eagles really weren't very good with a short field last night, at least in the first half of this game. Do you kind of see it the same way? Like, do you see that sort of disrespect? Do you think Nakobe Dean is onto something?
I definitely think there's some method to the madness right there with, the Eagles offense and its struggles. How many times did the Lions go for it on fourth down? I think they were like, 0 for 6 on fourth down.
Yeah,
and so many times in that game, the Eagles got good field position and they only ended up getting 1 touchdown on the night. There's one of those plays that's like also very damning. I think it was also like right after they got that short fieldage. It was either one of the deep throws to Devontae or a deep throw to Saquon where Jalen just completely overthrew him and Saquon or Devontae was just completely wide open. And it's just, you can't get that short fieldage and then just instantly go 3 and out. That's the main problem with the offense, that you just can't do in that. And that's probably why someone like Dan Campbell is just going to completely abuse the fourth downs because, hey, you're not making us pay for it. So I'm just going to keep doing it until we eventually convert.
Here's the crazy thing. Like, so if you go heads up, Lions versus Eagles, and you're just looking at third down efficiency and fourth down efficiency, which obviously is probably the most important thing for you. Unless you're just like, if your offense is clicking on all cylinders and you really aren't getting to third downs, you're not getting to fourth downs, you're just having quick drives and you're just, picking up chunk yardage. It's great. But on the night, both offenses were subpar at best on third down and fourth down. Let me hit with the numbers. So the Eagles end up winning the game by 7 points. They were only 4 of 15 on third down. They only went for it once on fourth down. They went 0 for 1. Remember, that was the play where they decided not to opt for the tush push. I was kind of like, what the hell are they thinking? And it didn't work out. I wonder how much of that falls on some of those concerns on the offensive line about the lack of ability to gel. Like maybe that was it. I don't know. But for as subpar as the Eagles were on third and fourth down, here's what ultimately lost the game in a lot of ways, I think, for the Lions. 3 for 13 on third down. The bigger one is 0 for 5 on fourth down. If you're going to try to extend drives, if you're going to give your opponent a short field to work with, 0 for 5 ain't getting it done. If the Eagles offense were clicking on all cylinders, if this were like the Kellen Moore offense of a year ago, or the Shane Steichen offense, right? If that were the case, the Eagles probably hang 30-plus points on the Lions. There's also a chance that, like, after the first time or two of getting burned for a touchdown, that Dan Campbell plays a more conservative game at that point and says, you know what, like, we can't run the risk of going for it on fourth down in our own half of the field. But you kind of have to play based off what you're seeing. And I would say that, today it just felt like watching and listening to some of the national media takes, listening to Bill Simmons' podcast today, listened to a little bit of First Take this morning. It seems like, Dan Campbell wasn't being crucified for the decision to go for it on fourth down as much. But like, I don't have the problem. If that is how you get to the dance, if that's how you find the most success is by being an aggressive coach, an aggressive team, and you only lose by 7 points, I don't think it was the wrong decision. Your team couldn't execute. That part is true. But like, I don't necessarily hold it against the guy. Like that's how they found as much success as they have under him.
No, you gotta stay true to your morals, and that's some of the things that even makes me question about Nick Sirianni, because he always talks about being aggressive in certain situations, but then what do we see when they get the third and long? They completely give up on the play, or they get to the end of a half, they just completely give up on the drive and just like, well, give up. We're just gonna go to the half. It's you got to die by your morals, and I kind of do respect it in that fact with Dan Campbell. So I don't blame him.
And again, it's only a 7-point game. By the time all the dust settles, it's a 7-point game. Obviously, again, this could have shifted one way or the other, depending on if the Eagles had been more efficient in the offensive, in their offensive game plan and execution. But like ultimately, you walk away from this game and you go, all right, the Eagles are 8-2. Now we have this thing from Derek Gunn kind of floating out there that maybe things aren't all rainbows and smiles behind the scenes, which would be far from ideal. But like, let's just look at it holistically here. The Eagles are 8-2. as things stand right now, and this is again with Lane Johnson going out, which is bad, very bad. No one is obviously happy about it. Even with all of that considered, the Eagles are in a really good position playoff wise. I mean, granted, only 10 games have been played. They still have 7 remaining. But like on the whole, the Eagles could pretty much vomit all over themselves and still win the NFC East. So the playoffs are almost a foregone conclusion. And unless they suffer that many injuries on the offensive line, I mean, it would take a lot. It would really take having to piss off the football gods for this not to work out. Like if you haven't looked at the NFC East in a bit, the Cowboys are 3-5-1. The Commanders are 3-8. And the Giants are 2-9. I'm not really concerned about the rest of the NFC East. Now, where things get a little bit tricky is that in both the NFC North and the NFC West, there are multiple teams that are kind of nipping at your heels. So you've got the Bears, who are 7-3. You just took on the Packers and the Lions, who are 6-3-1 and 6-4, respectively. And then out west, you've got the Rams, who match you with an 8-2 record. The Seahawks are 7-3, and the 49ers are 7-4. So there are a lot of teams. This is like a year where there's not, I would say there isn't as much parity. It definitely feels like you have a very strong set of teams in the NFC and then a lot of very bad teams in the NFC. There really aren't that many that are in the middle. Like even if you look at the NFC South, they have 2 teams that, well, the Bucks are 6-4 and the Panthers are 6-5. But like there's still relatively competitive. You're talking about like a 2-game gap between the top of the conference and some of these other teams. And I know I said like it's not a lot of parity. I'm saying that because like they're all well over 500. They're not like a bunch of 500 teams. You don't just have a bunch of teams that are like 5-5 or whatever, right? Like they're all in pretty good shape. So if you're the Eagles, you have to keep that pedal to the metal. I don't know how much the home field advantage in the playoffs would really matter. You're a cold weather team anyway. Does going to Chicago really scare you? I don't know. If you have to go play the Rams, that's indoors. That doesn't really scare you. Does playing in Seattle necessarily scare you in the postseason? Like maybe not.
The Rams would also be a glorified home game just because.
Yeah.
SoFi.
100%. Chris Reed says famous last words. Okay. All right, fine.
I think also to your benefit, like all these teams that are in the battle for the conference, you've beaten majority of these teams. You've beaten the Rams. Granted, I know if you were to play the Rams again, they probably wouldn't lose like that again, like they did against the Eagles. You beat Tampa
Correct.
Bay. You've already beat Green Bay. You just beat Detroit. You don't play Seattle, but Seattle doesn't really scare me. They got Sam Darnold as their quarterback. He threw 4 picks yesterday. So once he gets into a tough time, he'll see ghosts. Chicago, they're a young team. They're 7-3. It's a nice record, but they do got a very tough schedule. They still got to play the Packers twice and the Lions again. So we'll see what happens there. So yes, it can't be understated how much getting all these wins does matter. I think it's just more to the fact that right now people are just scared that this offense is going to hold this team back once you get into the playoffs, especially with how dominant this defense is.
Well, I mean, Ford is right here. With the actual roster they have, the Eagles team should not be struggling. And I agree. And this is the thing that we've been talking about. It freaks me out that a team that has this much talent should not be scoring 10 points or 16 points. And I get that, like, on any given week, you can have a down week and you underwhelm and you disappoint. And maybe you lose with 16 points. You lose 23-16. If this Eagles defense weren't playing at the level that it is right now, you very well could be looking at back-to-back losses. But because the defense has been as dominant as it has been, it's covered up some warts. And unfortunately, like, we know in this town that, like, sometimes a team that, like, has some warts that are getting covered up, eventually that can get exposed. And I also see this, and Landros isn't wrong, says the one thing that scares me is the inept offense finally costs them a one and done. I mean, that is true. I mean, think about, so I hate comparing them to the Phillies, but like to compare them to the Phillies for a second, the thing that we all knew is that the Phillies starting pitching was incredible. And even the bullpen started to perform a little bit down the stretch, right? But we knew that it didn't matter because once you got to the playoffs, the offense had to show up. And for better or worse, it does kind of feel like that's where we are heading right now, where it's the defense is absolutely lights out. And Jalen Phillips has been a sensational addition. But like he feels like a game-changing, potentially like Super Bowl defining kind of acquisition. So again, like shout out to the front office and to Vic Fangio for this guy. But like Jalen Phillips has been fantastic, but like this defense could very well carry the Eagles through a playoff run, but the offense has to step up. And I think at some point it's fair to wonder, where is the Jalen Hurts who has the biggest balls on the field and has delivered 2 incredible performances in Super Bowls? Because we know that guy's in there. He hasn't gone away. When do we start to see that guy? Because at some point it has to happen. It just has to.
It's also with these past 2 weeks from Jalen, it's coming off of 2 weeks where he had a perfect passer rating against Minnesota, and he was also very good against the Giants. So is it just the matter of the fact that he's playing 2 better defenses or something like that? I'm not entirely sure. Is he hiding an injury? I have no idea. But I think just last year, yes, offense did step up when he needed to in the playoffs, especially the passing game. But the biggest difference, play callers. Kellen Moore to Kevin Patullo. I think that's your biggest weakness.
I agree. Let's end on a positive with the Eagles here real quick. Jalen Phillips last week or the week before said that getting acquired by the Eagles is the best thing that ever happened to him. He was asked post game if that's still still the case.
Still feel that way?
Doubling down on that statement. Ah!
So there you go. At least there's one guy who's happy to be in Philadelphia. Jalen Phillips. I'm serious. I cannot remember the Eagles making that kind of acquisition. Was it the LeGarrette Blount or the Jay Ajayi acquisition ahead of Super Bowl 52? Felt like a really big moment. This Jalen Phillips acquisition has like something special to it. We'll see if
it feels like it
see if
just
he
opens
keeps
up
that.
more holes, and especially that you got bodies back now. It just opens up everything.
Well, Nolan Smith coming back last week felt big. Dean being back and healthy, like
Brandon Graham adding
consistently.
depth.
Brandon Graham adding depth, and not. I think the nice thing, at least when it comes to Brandon Graham, is they are not putting him in a position where he has to be a difference maker. He gets to kind of come in, give you some useful reps. He's certainly creating some pressure. Like he's not just out there. It's not like a charity case thing. And it's not like sweet baby, old baby Brandon Graham. Like, no, he's earning his time, but they're not relying on him to make big plays. So it's very, very interesting. Okay. I want to get to a couple of other things here quick before we leave. While we were doing the show, or maybe just before it, the Flyers announced they made a trade. So we're going to talk about that for a second. And then we're going to get to the return of Paul George. All of this probably in the next 10 or so minutes before we bounce out of here. So the Flyers won in a shootout on Friday night against the Blues. That was a back and forth game. And by back and forth, I mean it was an absolutely painful game. Not one that inspired a lot of confidence. A lot of people tweeting about how Sam Ersson cannot be the backup for the Flyers because of how poorly he played. And then they get to the shootout, and he's once again the legitimate like iron wall. I don't know, like an iron curtain. I don't know what to make of it. It's insane. But also in that game, and this is the beauty of the timing of me doing a show. So I do a show on Friday, and I am bemoaning the fact that Owen Tippett made an absolutely dumbass, boneheaded play on Wednesday night. I'm yelling and screaming, and I'm all worked up on the show. And then the clips start going out on all the short form content places, TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, and everywhere else. And then I don't even know when the full segment of that thing came out. But Owen Tippett has 4 points on the night against the Blues, 3 assists. He has a goal. And then I start getting all the comments on YouTube, especially where they're like, well, he looks pretty damn good tonight with his 4-point night. I'm like, all right, like that's fine. That's totally fair. I stand by what I said. The thing that some of these people don't seem to understand is like one game does not turn an entire season around. One game does not make up for the fact that he has largely been
Invisible
or almost a net negative because he's been such a mess. There was a wild, like ridiculous comment that came out, and I need to read it. So there was a guy over on Facebook.
Oh,
And when I tell you that this comment is like up there as one of the weirdest comments I have ever seen, I mean this wholeheartedly. I got to try to figure out how to zoom. All right, here we go. So I put out this thing about Owen Tippett and how he had a terrible game and all that, right? So this person on YouTube, Will Griffin, 5647. I don't recognize that name. I don't know if that person's ever commented on any of my videos on any of these platforms. But he goes over to YouTube and he says, this didn't age well. Dude was off by a literal inch. I'm proud owner of a Tippett poster, t-shirt, and on-ice jersey. I love how this was such a bad take. You didn't even go live last night. Talk about a loser take. Now, there's a lot of capitalization there. I thought about reading that in a Trumpian way, and it looks like this guy is a motorbike, like a motorbike enthusiast. So I won't do that because, you know, the people who get on the motocross bikes, they're a little bit loopy, with all due respect. I'm pretty sure that your objectivity as a fan or as a human being kind of goes out the window when you note that you own an Owen Tippett poster, t-shirt, and on-ice jersey. And I simply commented back at him, I don't go live after games. Enjoy your merch. You related? Because I don't know who in the hell would be like, yes, I need a jersey, a shirt, and a poster unless they're related. Also, I don't go live after games. It rarely happens. I think I've only ever done live post games on this show after Phillies playoff games. So that was really interesting. JH, I love this, by the way. Damn, dude. He's got the Helga Pataki Tippett shrine in his closet. I want to imagine that there's just this guy, once he gets off the motocross bike, he goes and, you know, walks past the significant other, goes into the walk-in closet, parts the different jerseys and everything, goes past the jersey and the jersey, and in the back, there is a backlit. It's an orange light, and maybe there's like a goal horn that lights up every time Owen Tippett scores the goal, and there's a bubblegum created shrine to Owen Tippett. Maybe he's caught like a lock of hair or something down at the Xfinity Mobile Arena, and he's like popping it on there, just like Arnold. You remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
So
A whole level of creepy if that would be the case.
I mean, there are worse things in the world, but I think that's like right up there as being one of the weirdest, grossest things that we've ever seen. Yeah. For those who for some reason have never seen this before, Helga Pataki on Hey Arnold, she did this whole thing where she built a shrine to Arnold, the lead character in Hey Arnold, and you know, when I said the thing about the gum and everything, this is what it looked like. So you could just kind of put your mind to the test here. This was the shrine that Helga Pataki made to Arnold. That's all bubble gum. The pictures, I forgot about the pictures. And what's this? Ooh. Arnold's sandwich. What's over here? Arnold's hair. She had Arnold's hair in a jar. That's not weird at all. So anyway, maybe that guy. Yeah, maybe that's the guy.
You got to have an Owen Tippett jersey on the thing. You got to have the picture of probably the greatest moment of Owen Tippett's career, the spinorama goal.
That was a good goal.
That got
that
him
was
the
a damn good goal. Let's be fair. That was a damn good goal.
It was.
So
that'd be the highlight of his career.
It was certainly something. All right, now I brought up the Flyers really quickly because they also made a trade today, and it is a trade that is probably going to set them up. I mean, if they were trying to be a playoff team before, this might actually get it done. The Flyers have acquired Maxence Guenette from Ottawa in exchange for defenseman Dennis Gilbert. So, ladies and gentlemen, get your Philadelphia Flyers parade tickets ready. They will be going right down Broad Street. Here you go. This is what the Flyers put out a little bit ago. Maxence Guenette. I don't actually know if that's how you say Maxence. I assume he's French. He has to be. We're going to look him up right now. I've never heard of this guy before. Maybe he's really good and I'm an idiot. Let's see. He's 24 years old. Okay. They traded for a 24-year-old defenseman. Let's see. Is he a big defenseman? Because we know that the Philadelphia Flyers, they like their big defenseman. He's 6'2", 209 pounds, according to Elite Prospects. And he has not factored into a single NHL game this year. So there's that. He's spent most of his career to this point in the AHL, before that in the Q. So not a guy that you look at and say he's going to be a game changer for this team right now. I think we're very clearly looking at a guy who, like, it's at worst, it's a lottery ticket. Also, Dennis Gilbert had no place on this team. Under no circumstances were we ever going to see, I think, Dennis Gilbert play meaningful minutes for this team. We saw Juleson kind of take that number 7 defenseman spot, kind of take that competition over for the most part. And then, of course, you have your young guys that you do care about, and you have your Cam York, who came back and has really excelled. Drysdale's had a good year. Oh, and by the way, they have Rasmus Ristolainen kind of waiting in the wings, waiting to get healthy, maybe back before the calendar year is over. Dennis Gilbert didn't have a place here. Do you like the idea of moving off of a guy for a totally unproven player who maybe could turn into something someday? Maybe.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a, low risk reward type of move, but you want to know my true thoughts on this trade when it happened?
Yeah.
So if I can.
Oh my gosh, are you about to share something on the screen? Oh, okay.
Whoop-de-doo. What does it all mean, Basil?
That's how I feel.
Okay. Wow.
That's how I feel.
Wow. Okay. A little Austin Powers on the show. Things I didn't expect to see on the show today. My kids are also home now, so I can hear them screaming upstairs, which is, that makes the expediency of having to wrap up the show significantly higher. I do want to take a look here really quick, though, because I don't remember how much Dennis Gilbert was making on this team, but I don't think it was much. They signed him in the offseason. He really was supposed to just be a guy that they could kind of lean on for a little bit of depth on this team. And again, I don't think there was ever much of a thought that he was going to be like an every night kind of guy. Let's see. I don't even know where his contract is at right now because they just traded him to Ottawa and I don't see him there. And I don't see him listed for the Flyers on their SPO track. So I don't. There he goes. Hold on. There he was. I just lost him. I had him and I lost him. All right. It doesn't matter.
That's why we need
Dennis
cap
Gilbert.
friendly.
Well, I miss those days. Those were the
Capitals.
days. Oh, Gilbert was down. I guess they had him buried in the minors. I don't know what his contract was when he signed. He signed an $875,000 contract with the Flyers in the offseason. So you trade a guy that you had absolutely no plans for in the future for a 24-year-old defenseman who has never really made it in the NHL. Not enough. Like when you're in the midst of a rebuild, it's not the worst thing for you to take a shot, right? Not the worst thing.
I mean, they took the shot on the guy that's playing down with the Phantoms right now that they got from Dallas.
Kyrou, Christian Kyrou.
Yeah, Kyrou. He's thriving down with the Phantoms. He's been playing really good.
Well.
Yeah.
It never hurts to take the opportunity to go and try to pick up a guy who could turn into something. When you have a known quantity and the ceiling of that known quantity is extremely low, it doesn't hurt to make a deal like this. I don't see it being an issue at all. And if he stays in the minors, it also doesn't really count much to your cap. By the way, I'm seeing that apparently Ken Rosenthal today said that the Phillies are looking at making trades of potentially Matt Strahm and Alec Boehm as candidates this offseason. I'll believe all that when I see it.
Yes, please.
The last thing that I will believe when I see, although it sounds as if it is actually going to happen, is that Paul George is apparently going to play for the Sixers tonight, make his season debut against his former team. Shams put out earlier today that after how many games? After how much time? After how much money has been spent on this man? That Paul George is expected to be back in the lineup with the Sixers, joining them for the first time. Here it is, the Shams tweet. Sixers forward Paul George is expected to make his season debut at home tonight against his former team, the Los Angeles Clippers. Sources tell ESPN. George has rehabilitated offseason knee surgery. So apparently that means his knee is in full health. The funny thing is that I've been seeing for the last few weeks open questions about, it sounds like Paul George has been practicing with the team for maybe even weeks and has looked fully healthy in those scrimmages and those practices and everything. So I guess the question is this. What the hell should we expect from Paul George?
Just hopefully his legs just don't fall off. Just it's not a situation where his whole torso falls off and he has to try to guide his legs back to his torso. I don't want it to be that type of situation.
I think as long as Paul George, so this is your tricky thing. And I will actually say there is an optimist view to look at this and a realist way to look at it, and neither of them are particularly bad for the Sixers. The optimist view is as such. Paul George wasn't exactly a great spot-up shooter last year as the third option on the team. If you look at this roster, knowing that Joel Embiid is kind of in and out, Tyrese Maxey is bona fide, superstar in the making, so he's your number one option. VJ Edgecombe looked for a bit as if he was going to exceed every expectation and just go absolutely hog wild as a rookie. He's come back down to earth a bit, and that's okay. You have Quentin Grimes comes off the bench. Kelly Oubre's hurt. You put all those things together. Is there a chance here that Paul George can be relied on in important parts of games, important points in games, to be a ball handler. He can be. He's a surprisingly good ball handler for a guy his size. Can he hit a shot from just about anywhere on the court? He can. Do you want him to try to find his own rhythm and maybe ball handle a bit to find that rhythm? Yes, especially as he's coming back and kind of getting acclimated to the lineup. I could actually make the case right now that if Paul George can come in and in a somewhat efficient way be your number 2 scorer on the team, while VJ Edgecombe continues to find his footing as a rookie, or be your number 3 scorer because a guy like Quentin Grimes comes in off the bench and can drop 20-plus points a game, I'd say that's actually not the worst thing in the world. Right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's not bad.
All I ask, just look healthy. I know it's a very tough ask for Paul George in his career. Just look healthy. That's all I'm asking for.
The tricky thing that they're going to run into is this, though. Because Embiid's availability is just so hard to kind of predict, right? You can't exactly create a role for Paul George where he can get himself acclimated as being like the third option behind Maxey and Embiid if Embiid isn't in. So the one thing that they're going to have to figure out is how do you incorporate Paul George into this offense in a way that allows him to still flourish in whatever role he's going to have, but then not turn him into a guy who's looking for his shot too much when Embiid is back. Nick Nurse has a heck of a task ahead of him. But obviously, when we take a look at this objectively and we rank Paul George versus the other options on the team, he by far is the best option to be the second scorer on the team. It's just a matter of trying to get himself acclimated and back in game shape.
Yeah, it's basically right now. You just hope that nothing flares up like with Joel Embiid and the other knee. Hopefully it's not going to be something to that extent. Just be healthy. Just if these guys can find him open, if he can get himself open, you'll probably find more success with your shooting. Maybe, and I think that's something they desperately need. Somebody that can just consistently hit their shots. Because you're losing that with Edgecombe. Maxey, he's been mostly good, but he has his up and down moments. So if Paul George could just be a steady veteran, that'll help.
I just have to tell you really quick. So my 2-year-old just ran downstairs.
Ooh.
So a little bit earlier, when I said the kids are home, my 5-year-old was standing at the door and she was trying to pull open one of the doors to the office, and she can't open it, which is great. It's fantastic. It's not because it's locked. It's just they're like tight French doors. Then I hear this pitter patter of footsteps while you were just talking, and I look over and it's my 2-year-old, and he's got a Buc-ee's. It looks like a varsity jacket. He's got a Buc-ee's jacket, and he's standing by one of the surround sound speakers in the main part of the basement with a remote in his hand.
Oh no!
And that's how I know all hell has broken loose, and it's time to wrap up the show.
Oh no!
So, Amadeo, thanks for hopping on as always.
No problem.
A big thank you to everybody who tuned in on Facebook, YouTube, and X. Do me a favor if you haven't done so already. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. We'll be back on Wednesday and again on Friday. Don't forget on Wednesday, there's also an episode of Snow the Goalie Radio. The location is still TBD. We're either going to be in New Jersey or we're going to be in the Northeast on the Boulevard. That all depends on whether or not we have a guest. There's a guest that we're, I think, still in conversations about getting. If there's a guest, it'll be in New Jersey. If not, it'll be in Philly. But we'll have that out on social media later this week. In the meantime, I will be back on Wednesday and on Friday here with the Russ Joy Show. You can follow me over on Twitter at JoyOnBroad. You can also find me on Instagram if you live over there as well, at JoyOnBroad. And we can have a conversation. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. Do you think that the Eagles are more stressful to watch than having your car stolen? I don't know. There were people in the comments who felt one way or the other. So, again, like the video, share the video, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notified whenever we go live. And if you like podcast feeds better, you can always find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. For Video Guy Amadeo, I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Talk to each and every one of you on a wonderful Wednesday. Until then, enjoy a marvelous Monday. Have a terrific Tuesday, and I'll see you on Wednesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye now.